How long have I been working with Interfaith? About 10 years. I started after I retired from Miller Brewing Company, and I just wanted something to do that gave me joy. So I started out with the Stockbox program, and initially just making phone calls, setting up drivers and routes, and ensuring that people got their extra food. Stock Boxes is a program for low-income elderly where they get a box of supplemental food once a month. And then after I had been doing that for a couple of years, I had filled out the forms and saying I'd be willing to drive. And I was in the office, and Janine, or I think it was Janine, said, "Would you like to drive? We need a driver tomorrow. Could you drive somebody to the Eye Institute?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. That doesn't bother me to drive to Milwaukee." So I did that. Most of my driving was long distance or longer distance. I like to drive people to Frederick and Wauwatosa, to the VA. And driving to the VA was a good experience. In my driving, I drove 3 World War II veterans in the past, and I know they've all passed away since then, but just such an honor. How does this help the seniors? Most of the seniors that are driven to different sites don't really have access to relatives or who can drive them, or are unable to drive anymore, and don't feel comfortable driving on the freeways, especially for medical procedures or appointments. So they're very grateful for us. Or they're low income, and the cost of driving, having someone drive them, is prohibitive. Also, a lot of the taxi services only work in the county, and if you have to go into Milwaukee or Fond du Lac or Sheboygan County, you really don't have a lot of options. Best experience, I would have to say, driving one of my World War II veterans. She was a nurse in the European theater near the end of the war, and she was just so full of life. She was in her late 90s at the time, but she talked about how the doctors were always asking the nurses out to go dancing after hours, and that was pretty funny. You can work as little or as much as you want. There are some people who volunteer several times a week. There are some people who volunteer only once or twice a month. And you can volunteer to do short rides, just where you're picking people up in town and taking them to a local clinic. Or you can volunteer for longer rides where you're going to the VA or Frederick.